helping us to engage in this conversation about how they see us.
Yeah.
And yes, we're going to touch on the when they see us. We're going to segue into that now. But we want to make sure that you're joining this conversation. If you have questions or feedback, please make sure you put it in the comments. But we've been talking about how important it is to be a part of your community. Mm-hmm. We do need community leaders, but we also need a community of leaders. Yeah. And so a leader doesn't necessarily have to be that one person. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is that you are purpose to do to make sure that our community keeps progressing and moving forward, that's your responsibility. Not just socially, but your gifted right as being placed here on earth.
Your purpose.
You're not going to do something about it. We need you out the way.
No doubt.
So we can keep moving. That being said, we got to talk about when they see us.
Yeah.
We kind of have to. But before we even kind of segue into that, Dwayne just brought up a good point about the challenges that we see at the borders. Yeah. And I cannot remember the gentleman's name, but I'm going to get it and put it in there. But this guy is Hispanic, Latin guy. Mm-hmm. He just put a video out about a week or two ago. Mm-hmm. Now the video is very controversial because he does some things in there that will make you be like, whoo. But it makes you feel bad and uneasy and uncomfortable on purpose. But it's a music video. Yeah. And essentially his conversation in the music video, we'll put the link in our podcast about the border issue. Mm-hmm. And he's talking about how he calls it Camp America. Mm-hmm. Right. It's called Who Wants to Go to Camp America? And he's like, you're put on pain pills to, make you domicile. It shows where the guards are raping young prisoners. Right. And so that's one of the pieces that makes you really uncomfortable. Right. So some people are like, but that's uncomfortable. He shouldn't have put that in there, but it is true. Right. So I think we are in a time where people are speaking out and using their platforms as much as they can. Yeah. And one of those ways has been Ava's documentary about when they see us.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So did you catch the documentary or the panel discussion?
I did. Okay. I saw the documentary. I think like a lot of people, I struggled to get through it. Mm-hmm. Some parts more than others. I just thought they did a brilliant job in laying out just how complicated and interconnected these systems of oppression are. Mm-hmm. So I will get to the documentary, but I just want to note that like what's happening again at the border is reflective of what happened in World War II with the Japanese in internment camps, right?
Oh wow!
And that you go back again and you look at like the oppression of Native Americans who were massacred, and of course we know about our situation with slavery, and you can just continue to look at these historic things which have happened, right? So now this is an era of mass incarceration, and we shouldn't have been surprised at the level of interconnectedness, all those systems, and when they see us demonstrated, how the police, targeted, black boys initially, how the DA's office was working in concert with that, how the judges were all part of that system, how the parole system is only made to continue to oppress people, especially how there's no ability for you to recover from any of that, right? Yeah. And how do you get ahead?
How do you get ahead? So one of the things I was watching the Trevor Noah, I love him, the Daily Show. So he interviewed Ava. One of the things she mentioned is why she changed the name from the Central Park 5. Yeah. Why didn't she call the movie that or the series that? Yeah. She said Central Park 5, the name dehumanized them. That's right. And was media language. And so she wanted to ask the question, when they see us, what happens? Right. And it used this and what brilliance to even think that deeply into not wanting to. I mean, it was already going to represented specifically a piece of the criminal justice system. Yeah. So part 1 was about policy, the illegal use of force, interrogating without parents. Yeah. Part 2 was about judges, bail, and prosecutors. Yeah. Part 3 was about the juvenile detention experience and how many kids are treated as adults, but specifically our kids. Right. And 4 was about post-incarceration and how they're treated as second-class citizens. If you've ever had that experience.
Was the media in there? Was that number 2? Media? Okay.
Yeah. Yes. It was along number 2. And how the media will leverage it, because that was a big thing. Trump's commentary. And language around what was it, an $87,000 ad he put up?
Yeah.
What was it called? Calling for the death penalty?
Calling for the death penalty. So, that was, it was a very emotional series. Some people didn't see it.
I didn't watch it.
Yeah.
But I do have
I understand why.
Yeah, and I do have just a question for all of us, because even not watching it, just the title kind of made me think about when they see us. Like, did you like internalize that for your own self? Like I did. Like I did. Like when they see us, like when they see me, because even in the environment that I'm in, that I work in, every meeting I am the only black female.
Yeah.
And I went into a meeting the other day. We were interviewing someone, and we get to dress casual. And I was like, "Wow!" I had kind of like we could wear shorts. I had like cut off shorts. I had on like a t-shirt and sneakers. Again, we can wear casual clothing, but sometimes when I go and greet people, it's almost like, oh. Yeah. And it was like, what do they see when they see me?
Yeah.
When they see us, when I show up into a room. It just made me think about how I'm viewed when I show up.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So I think a part of it for me was, I don't know if they see us, ever. And I think that so much of it is tied. I mentioned earlier that I recognize my own privilege that I'm afforded. Like I said, we just came back from a meeting with through the Mayor's Commission on African American Males. We just came back from a meeting with Commissioner Ross, Police Commissioner Ross, and Mayor Kinney, right, and 2 deputies and a bunch of dope black men who are trying to make change in the city. Like that's privilege, that's power. Right. And I got the salt and pepper, right? And I walk, people say hello, sir. Right, and I know that that's how I carry myself at this point, and I've kind of earned that. Right, but that's not.
But even when they see you even recognize the privilege.
Oh, well, yeah, and the tricky part of it is that not the whole notion of it. You're talking about this leader, like the exceptionalism of it, right, and how folks aren't able, like we collectively don't get seen.
Right, not collectively.
You gotta be super Negro in order to have for yourself.
I'm not a token black girl.
And I think that's why
meet their quota.
But that's why sometimes too, black people, male, female, whatever, will get stuck in the I got mine, because they do exalt the one. So you be like, hold on, I didn't grab my pedestal.
Listen, they let me
in. Ain't enough room up here.
They let me in.
It's only one spot. It's not enough room up here for all of us. I mean, now we know we
turn
do.
your back, exactly.
Yeah, but I can see why, for centuries from slavery on, and we can always pinpoint back to, even though they say we always bring up, and I always say we don't pull the race card, we identify. I say it all the time. We don't pull it, but because we can acknowledge it is a problem. But I think that does put us in a position. But it's funny you say that about do they see us?
So the point you asked about how I got involved in this is because I've always been uncomfortable and dissatisfied with like the status quo about how we are.
We are
that we live in.
I've
always been dissatisfied, so that's driven me to, and it still drives me today to like try to make a difference in the world.
Exactly.
Seriously.
Exactly.
And there's so many people suffering all over. The series just did a great job illustrating it, but that can very much be happening right now.
It does.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like this is happening, and we're just.
It is.
And when they see us, again, we're allowing it to happen.
Exactly.
So that's the whole point. People saw this happening, and they allowed it to happen to these boys. Right?
It's really insane.
Tough.
So I watched 2. So there was a series, and then there was Oprah's panel discussion that she did. She did the panel discussion with the 5 young men who were, actually who were actually indicted for the rape charges, and then she also did it with the actors who played those young men. And so it was borderline like. I'm definitely not going to try to relate my emotion watching this happen to that of these parents and people who went through it.
Right.
But the way it felt like my heart was ripped out of my chest as I watched these men now try to speak, just even in feeling vindicated, right? Because everybody was like, do you feel vindicated? And they're like, no.
On the other side. But even still.
No. And the oldest one we were talking about, Corey Wise, you could tell in his eye, his soul, like had just been pulled from him. He didn't have much to say. Oprah asked him, do you feel like this movie gave you something? He was like, no, never. The one young man whose father, who had the issues with his father. I think his name was Kevin, but even for him, Aaron, that was his name. He was like, he could not imagine coming back from this. Antron. Yeah. He was like, I couldn't imagine coming back from this. I'll never be okay.
Yeah. I can't think even his relationship with his father ever got right.
The prosecutor needs to go to jail. Mm-hmm. Those police officers need to go to jail. Mm-hmm. Period.
So it's like, who polices them though? Like, how do we even?
Because the system is designed in the way that it is, right? That it just doesn't function well. So we just talked about the Facebook posts, right, by the police officers, and connecting them to 70 plus here in Philadelphia, and like, they need to be fired, right? Period, right? Yeah. But what happens so often is that a city will take action, and then the labor union, the police
steps
union, gets involved. It's arbitrated by some folks and a judge. And they get hired again, right? And like, how do you?
Or at minimum, if they're at that age, they can be, transition on out very comfortably.
Oh, they retire.
Right.
Yeah, they retire out
with benefits, right?
And pensions, and so to your,
it's problematic.
Yeah, and so we got to touch on then the experience that we saw with voting back in May for the Black community. There were some numbers that came out that said only 10% of the Black population in Philly voted. Wow. Back in May, and we all know you'll see a mayor before you see the president. So while we show up for we got to show up for this too.
I think because the presidential is more public. It's more of a conversation. It's much more talked about. And even Lexi and I, going backwards, we met with a young lady. And what was her position?
She worked with you. You may know her, Jasmine Sessoms.
Okay,
yeah.
So my question to her was, why isn't there more groundwork before the vote is even casted? Why aren't we in the communities beforehand? Why aren't we empowering people? Don't just put up a sign before the week before I'm supposed to vote. Like it's just not empowering. And people, if they don't feel empowered, they don't feel like they have a responsibility to it. We almost disconnect versus having a conversation in the communities months beforehand, doing more door knocking, faces.
Here's the thing: don't think that the way these elections are designed. Right. Is meant to get people to the polls.
Yeah.
So, like, if we want, there are ways for us to vote. We can have 90+% voter participation.
And it's intentional.
But don't believe that's what they want for
That's
us.
the problem.
It's intentional not to promote it. And so the DA is an elected position, right? So going back to the series, the DA is an elected position.
It's one of the most important positions there are.
So if you don't vote, and then you get somebody like, what's her name, Linda Fairstein in office, that's what we're facing against. Is you talked about the privilege and the power. Well, if you put someone who already feels privileged and powerful simply because of their race,
exactly,
that's an interesting concept. So you said about getting to the polls is designed maybe not to. How do we activate more?
Well,
from your perspective.
Some elections bring out more people than others, right? So I wonder if you compare the numbers to the last election when you did have a DA who was running in a climate around Black Lives Matter and who had an agenda that was consistent with what folks wanted to see.
What the community was exactly wanted to see.
Right?
I'm sure.
Yeah, so like this election
That's true.
was not necessarily inspiring.
Right.
One of the folks who I say,
profile.
the mayor's race wasn't really close at all.
No.
You had a million people running for council.
Oh my gosh.
I would just note that, like Helen Gim, who was at large, was the last candidate elected, got that eighth slot for at large during the previous election. This one, she blew everyone out the water. But she is pushing a really progressive agenda.
She is. And I saw her over the TV. I saw her.
And she was at a lot of events.
She was.
I've seen her every
So,
week.
like, politicians just interested in keeping their jobs. Like, for me, I want someone who's an activist who wants to make a change, who is impatient with it. They don't have to get it all right all the time.
No, but you got to try. I need to see some effort. Need to see some effort for it. So I think one of the things that another movie that came to mind, and I wonder if you could share some tips as we transition to in our light and our stretching part of the conversation. As a Black male, grew up in Philadelphia. How was it for you? Do you at any point in time growing up, or did you hear or think about how you are supposed to act when you're encountered by like police or other people. So you remember, or if for those who saw the movie, The Hate You Give, there was one scene where the dad sat